Good evening and welcome to the 2022 WITA WITF annual dinner. It is so great to see so many of you here in person. Our theme tonight is Back to the Beach, because after two COVID-timed fall dinners, we hope that bringing the Wida dinner back to the summer helps ease us back to a return to normal, whatever the new normal might be. We have a packed program today and lots of thanks to hand out, starting with thanks to all of you, our sponsors who supported us this year and for the past few years when there's been so much uncertainty. We have so many new sponsors and many returning sponsors, and we are grateful to all of you. Thanks as well to our honorees and speakers. We're very grateful you could join us tonight. Special thanks to the embassies who donated wine and beer for tonight's event, to the Wine Institute for providing the wine to accompany tonight's dinner, and to the Distilled Spirits Council of the United States for supporting our pre- and post-dinner receptions. Thank you very much. Shh. Special thanks as well to the staff at the Ronald Reagan Building and International Trade Center, Hasai, Annette, Philip, and Dennis, and the whole team here and at GSA. They are great partners with WITA, and we're very grateful for their support for this event and our other events in this wonderful venue. And of course, to our amazing team at WITA, led by my colleague Diego Añez, who pulls all the threads together tonight to make this event and all our events possible. Thank you, Diego. Thanks as well to our interns and volunteers. A few housekeeping thoughts items for tonight. Even though we asked everyone here to be vaccinated or negative test tonight, we know that a lot of you are nervous. So please try to keep tonight as safe as possible. Appreciate if you want to wear your mask or respect people's boundaries. We totally understand. It's a difficult time and we want to respect people's personal space as much as possible. You have a copy of tonight's program at your seats. After my good friend Steve Lamarr's opening remarks, we'll present our first award to Senator Pat Toomey. We'll then take a short break for dinner and restart the program around 8 p.m. with our Master of Ceremonies, Ambassador Rufus Yerxa, and we'll try to wrap up the award presentations by 9 p.m. so you can enjoy each other's companies at our after-dinner reception back at the beach. With that, I'd like to welcome to the stage the Chairman of WITA's Board of Directors, Steve Lamarr.
Thanks, Ken. It's great to be back in person at the 2022 Trade Prom. We'll dig into tonight's program, and I invite you to dig into your salads while I make a few additional remarks. First, congratulations to all of tonight's honorees, Senator Pat Toomey, Congressman Ron Kind, who we heard just earlier, and Ambassador Carla A. Thanks in advance also to our incredible speakers and introducers, Chairman Earl Blumenauer, Senator Rob Portman, Ambassador Susan Schwab, Ambassador Jayme White, and Director General Sabine Weyand. Special thanks to tonight's Master of Ceremonies, Ambassador Rufus Yerxa, the winner of our 2021 Lifetime Achievement Award, will join after we've had our dinner. WITA and our trade community has been on an emotional and remarkable global journey since the pandemic upended our lives in March of 2020. The demand for WITA leadership has never been greater, and I'm pleased to say that we've worked hard to fulfill that demand. Let me share with you a few eye-popping numbers to bear this out. We've staged 95 virtual and in-person events since March of 2020. During that time, we've reached more than 44,000 attendees in 49 states and over 100 countries. Diego can tell you which state is the outlier there. When we gathered for the Trade Prom in 2019, our membership stood at 3,200. We now stand at 4,738. That's nearly a 50% increase. This success was made possible by many, including a phenomenal array of speakers drawn from across the globe, many in this room, but in particular through the tireless efforts of Ken Levinson, WITA's Executive Director, who you just heard, and Diego Añez, WITA's Managing Director. Each day they raise the bar for our community. And they're raising the bar even further. And let me get your attention for a second, because this is really cool what I'm going to talk about. We're about to launch an important new initiative, the Wida Academy. The mission of the Wida Academy is to make trade education and career opportunities in international trade accessible to communities in the United States and around the world, and to make the trade community itself more diverse, equitable, and inclusive. Diego Inez will be leading this important trade community initiative, and we hope you will find time to reach out to him or Ken if you want to learn more about the Wida Academy. So special thanks to Ted Ostell, the WITF Foundation President and our dinner chair, and to Sarah Thorne, Bill Lane, Stephanie Lester, Selena Jackson, Ken Levinson, and Diego Inez, tonight's dinner committee, as well as to the entire WITA and WITF board. Thanks also to tonight's volunteer team. You met some of them on the way in, and in particular, the WITA interns. And please be sure to show your support for these very fine individuals and the schools where they are studying. Shana Adams from Harvard University, Gwyneth Berry from Georgetown University, Jason Dirks, University of Nebraska at Lincoln, Howard Fye, Ohio State University, and Sarah Wozniak from the College of William and Mary. Please join me in thanking them for their help. And with that, let me wish you the best of luck on bingo tonight, and let me invite up to the stage former U.S. Trade Representative and 2011 Distinguished Service Award honoree, Senator Rob Portman, who will introduce our first honoree.
Well, Steve, thank you very much. It's great to be here. Carla and I were talking a moment ago about how much we loved our USTR colleagues, and it's true, and I think about half the people in this room I've worked with in one way or another over the years. It's always fun to be with the trade team. Steve and I actually worked together on an important issue, which is to try to reshore personal protective equipment, like gowns and masks and so on. And our bill made a little history. It brought people together. It's one of the only bills in history ever endorsed by the American Apparel and Footwear Association and the National Council of Trade Organizations. So how about that? They should get an award tonight. They are seated at the opposite sides of the table, of the room, so that's true. But listening to Ken and to Rufus and to the whole WITA team, thanks for organizing this again. It's our prom, and we appreciate that, and I've been here quite a few times. Tonight, it's really great to be with Carla Hills, the incomparable Carla Hills, who does not age and who is just an amazing mentor to me and helped me a lot when I was U.S. Trade Rep. And then the person who made me look good and then made me look bad, Susan Schwab. She made me look good when she was my deputy. She made me look bad when she became U.S. Trade Rep and was so much better than I was. Susan, good to see you. And then, again, so many friends here tonight, and one really special one, and that is one of my colleagues in the United States Senate, Pat Toomey. My job tonight is to talk about Pat, which is going to be easy. I've had the privilege of working with him in the United States Senate for the past 12 years, and then we worked together in the United States House of Representatives. Before that, we've also been on the campaign trail together and have done a lot of stuff together. He is whip smart. He is persuasive, and he is principled. He has spent decades defending Adam Smith, David Ricardo, and Pat Toomey. And I put them in sort of the same phalanx there, you know, the apostles of free trade. He knows a little bit about rising tide, lifting all boats, because he's been in the private sector himself. He knows the power of free markets to lift people out of poverty, lower costs for consumers, and create more jobs with better wages. That's what we're all about, right? So Pat's been the leader of this free trade group in the United States Congress. As this group knows well, perhaps, Pat and I have not always seen eye to eye on trade on every issue. We've worked side by side, but we've also gone nose to nose on some things. He might think that my Level the Playing Field Act is not to be mentioned in polite company, and maybe not in this room. But seriously, Pat and I have worked well together on a number of issues that do affect our trade policy. We'd like to do more. As an example, with regard to how to fix our national security tariffs, we have some great ideas. Maybe as a retirement gift to Pat and myself, we could have a final markup of the Finance Committee on some of these important trade initiatives we've been trying to get done. That would be great. Yep, thank you for that applause. At a time when trade expansion is a little out of favor, Pat and I have been pushing hard to persuade the current administration and anybody who will listen to expand our ability to sell our products overseas. And we actually have 2 legislative initiatives right now going on that are bipartisan with regard to TPA expansion, one with the WTO and plurilaterals, and the other with regard to the UK agreement. But those probably are not something we're going to see soon, unfortunately. We've got to get back to the business of expanding trade. One last thing I want to say before this award is presented to Pat. When you go up for drinks tonight, the drinks are going to be on Pat. The security code on the back of his credit card is 232. So to Mr. Section 232, it is now my honor to present the Washington International Trade Association's Distinguished Service Award to Senator Pat Toomey.
That's for you.
Thank you so much.
You want?
Thank you, carry it, though. Want me to put it in your place?
I'm sorry?
I'm going to put it down.
Yeah, can we? Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. That was extraordinarily kind of you. Thank you for this recognition. Thanks for the award. Rob, thank you very much for your kind words. You know, I'm a huge fan of Rob Portman. I have been since I got to know Rob when we served together in the House. In a lot of ways, we've had similar paths. We both went to the Senate. We both served on the Finance Committee. We're both very interested in trade, obviously. I've always had great respect for Rob's deep knowledge and appreciation for the big picture, but also being willing to get into the details, including on trade. I can't imagine how much he learned and processed when he was a trade rep. But it occurred to me that in the time after that, Rob may have forgotten a little bit of what he learned when he was a trade rep. So Rob, I brought a tool that I think is going to help you out. I'm going to show it to you. Just stay with me 1 minute. You see, one of the things we disagreed on was the merits of what did you guys call it, USMCA? See, Rob voted on the small side of the greater than symbol. I voted the other way. But I acknowledge I was the only Republican senator that came to that conclusion, so you can conclude from that what you will. But I also want to say one other thing, in all seriousness, about Rob Portman. I really think probably the professional highlight of my career in public office was the work I was able to do with Rob Portman on our tax reform in 2017. We spent, I can't tell you how many hours, mostly in windowless conference rooms, hammering out all kinds of nuance and details. Rob was absolutely indispensable to the process, and if you ask me, the product in the end was a huge improvement over what we had, was extremely constructive for economic growth, and I can tell you with complete certainty that it would not have happened without Rob Portman. So Rob, thank you very much for the great work that you did. So my staff tells me that when the invitation came for me to join you guys to receive this award, for which I am grateful, there was also an instruction that I should give some remarks, but I should keep them lighthearted. Which made me wonder, what is it about me that you think it was necessary to tell me that they had to be lighthearted? What am I, some kind of a trade nerd? Is that what you think? Like, you're people to talk? You come to the trade prom, okay? Probably annually. Maybe you were thinking about my book, the book that I wrote called The Road to Prosperity. It's available on Amazon.com. As a matter of fact, if a couple of you were to buy copies of it tonight, we would double the annual sales. But it's just a thought. But maybe you were thinking I was a bit nerdy because you looked at some of the subheadings in the chapter that I wrote on trade. I had a whole chapter on free trade. And, I mean, they were like some just amazing wordsmith work. Like the subtitle, Growing Trade Deficits Are Correlated with Faster Economic Growth. Or Foreign Export Subsidies Are a Gift to American Consumers. Then there's one of my favorites, Trade Actually Helps Poor Foreign Workers. This is true. These are all quotes. You'll know when you buy the book and you read it. But a big part of what I was trying to do actually in the book is to present ways to make the case for trade, because it's a challenge. It's a challenge to make the case to defend free trade, to expand trade. And lately, suggest we've not been doing so well in this challenge. One of the arguments we hear all the time is that trade deficits are like a disaster, the end of the world. It's an economic catastrophe if you have a trade deficit. I really think our previous president believed that the trade deficit that we had with any given country was a measure of the extent to which that country stole from us. So one of the things I posited is, let's think about, okay, take my case. I'm quite certain I have a trade deficit with my grocer. It's actually consistent, it's weekly, and it's completely one-way trade. My grocer never buys anything from me. I'm quite confident that this will never be corrected. It will never be reversed. But it's also never occurred to me that there's theft going on, because I get to eat the food, and that's okay with me. Another fact that strikes me as very interesting and peculiar, so I've represented Pennsylvania either in the House or in the Senate for its closing in on 18 years. And over the course of 18 years, many a time someone has come up to me and wanted to talk about a trade deficit. A special prize for anyone who can guess how many times someone came up to me and suggested that they had an urgent concern with the trade deficit that Pennsylvania has with New Jersey. I think you know the answer. It's zero. No, nobody cares. Nobody knows. But if there were genuinely an economic problem with having a trade deficit, then shouldn't we all be obsessing about our state's trade deficit or surplus with the various other states? Another great one is this notion that protectionism saves jobs. That's what it's about, right? That's why we're going to impose tariffs or quotas or whatever the device of the day is. So, let's take the 232 tariffs. A Harvard study on the job-creating effect of the 232 tariffs on steel and aluminum suggested that, in fact, in the steel and aluminum industry, it saved 1,000 jobs. I think maybe even created 1,000 jobs. That's great. Problem is downstream, it cost 75,000 jobs in industries that use steel and aluminum and became less competitive as a result. Now, how can a macroeconomic analysis not include both? So we know all of these things. We understand this. We understand other reasons that we're right and protectionists are wrong on trade. But as I say, lately we've been losing some ground, I think, in making the argument. Historically, right, we could pass trade agreements. Frankly, it was typically pretty partisan in the House. And then we'd have a president of either party that was pro-trade and a Senate with a pretty overwhelming vote in favor of trade. And that was the pattern. But we're not even having votes anymore. We're not even getting close to having trade agreements to vote on. That's the kind of ground that we're losing. And I would suggest that on both sides of the aisle, we're seeing this increasing support for protectionist policies. And they come in, new varieties, new flavors. There's the national security is economic security argument. There's the idea, this is all about reshoring our supply chain, as though making our supplies more expensive is good for our economy. And of course, there's the protectionist cult classic, fair trade. But what's really surprising to me, in all fairness, right, we all knew that Donald Trump was going to be anti-trade. He consistently had serious reservations about free trade for decades. What's surprising is that the current administration is extending the policies of Donald Trump. They've still got the 232 tariffs. They've still got 301 tariffs. They're reluctant to set up an exclusion process, and there's not a single free trade agreement negotiation underway. Not with the UK, not with South Korea, not with Kenya. This is the first time in a very long time that I can think of that we have trade rep, but we don't have trade negotiations underway. And so this is what we've got to address, right? And this is the challenge that we have. And Ron Kind alluded to this. We've got to get back on track with being the world's leader in advocating a global economy and expanding trade. The challenge, we all know the challenge, right? The benefits of protection. And protectionism is by its nature highly concentrated. The beneficiaries are concentrated. They are therefore visible. They're engaged because they've got a lot at stake. And the beneficiaries of free trade is dispersed and less concentrated, and so less likely to get engaged. And that's why politically it can be difficult to get the job done. But I want to strongly stress, trade is obviously an economic issue. It's about expanding voluntary exchange. That elevates the standard of living. We all know that. But at its heart, it's also a moral issue. It's about freedom. It's about the freedom of voluntary exchange. And that inherent that element of human nature extends beyond an arbitrary political border. And exports are great. I'm for them. I'm a big enthusiastic supporter of exports. But we should also remember, just as the purpose of production is to consume, so too the purpose of exports is to import. There's nothing wrong with imports, right? Access to affordable imports elevates our standard of living. It doesn't lower our standard of living. It drives growth and development, innovation. And then that helps us in turn develop the products that we can export around the world. So since we're in the Ronald Reagan building tonight, I'm going to end with a timely reminder that President Reagan gave us when he warned us against what he called that siren song of protectionism. In his last broadcast from the Reagan Ranch, the president implored the American people, and I quote, "Our peaceful trading partners are not our enemies. They are our allies. We should beware of the demagogues who are ready to declare a trade war against our friends, weaken our economy, our national security, and the entire free world, all while cynically waving the American flag. Free trade is natural, it is just, and it makes Americans more prosperous." So thank you for all the work you do to promote trade, and thank you very much for this honor that you've given me tonight.